Today's show is brought to you by Maitland & Co. Solicitors and Notaries. Now, of course, we hope that you never need to avail yourselves of legal services, but unfortunately life isn't like that. And Maitland & Co. are specialists in criminal defence and road traffic law, and they come highly recommended from Heart and Hand. They cover all over Scotland and they deal with all types of criminal cases, including road traffic law. They appear in Justice of the Peace, Sheriff and High Courts. They are on call 24/7 because unfortunately you're never going to know when you're going to need a lawyer, and they are available 24/7 for police station interviews, prison visits. Legal aid is available, competitive rates if applicant is not eligible for legal aid, and first interview is free. Maitland & Co. have represented fans charged under the offensive behaviour at football legislation. So, if you ever need legal counsel, the best place to go is Maitland & Co. Get in touch with them at info@maitlandandco.net. That's info@maitland, Maitland and co.net. 07714 615 845. That's info@maitlandandco.net, 07714 615 845 for all your criminal defence needs. Hello and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. My name's David Edgar, I'm your host, and as it's the International Week, we like to bring you something a little bit different until Rangers come back and save us all from our ennui that envelops us during this time. And you'll recall that earlier this season, during the October international break, we had Mark Dingwall, the editor of Follow fanzine, on to discuss the origins of the fanzine. And we promised you a part 2 later in the season, where Mark would discuss the evolution of Follow as a digital entity and its move to ff.com and how it's progressed over the years. So I'm delighted to say, joining me today is Mr. Mark Dingwall, editor emeritus of Follow fanzine and followfollow.com. Hello, big chap, how are you doing?
I'm doing superbly, David, and all the better for seeing you.
I'm excited, Mark, about us doing a podcast where no one can complain about the sound from you. I don't know.
I'll be Stormy Daniels. I don't know who you be.
I believe
you will hear every groan of ecstasy.
I believe the allegations is Stormy Daniels is saying she paid Trump $100,000 to get him to deny having an affair with her, but reports of that are unconfirmed. So, Mark, thanks for doing this. Now, as I say, listeners who may not know what we're talking about, go back into the archives and you'll hear, as Mark spoke about the early days of FF the fanzine, how it came into play and what the sort of original idea of it was, and put it together. And we wanted to chat about the evolution of it into digital, because a lot of younger people now will know it primarily through the website. So let's go back to it. I remember it being 1999 was when I first remember seeing it, and I'll be honest, at the time I was getting used to this newfound digital thingamabob called the internet and these things called search engines. I remember going in and thinking, right, search for something. Can't think of anything. And apart from that, yeah, found that quite quick. But it used to take ages to, digitise a picture down a dial-up. But I remember searching for FF, and the first thing I remember was a very basic site that had like 4 icons on it that were wee footballs. And not long after we sprung into board. But let's go back to the start. It's the late 90s. The internet's growing. What was the thought process?
The thought process was basically, I'd always been kind of, although always hopeless technically, I got into, my first provider was basically CompuServe, because CompuServe provided you with email, but also provided you with groups where you could go in and do, and you could chat about different things. And because I had the email, I was also into basically those Rangers list, Celtic list, Scottish list. There was Usenet groups, which I was never that keen on. Yeah. But really for me, the big thing was the kind of Rangers list, and Southern Ger, who's still with us as an admin and follow him, and
everybody hates those admin fuckers.
Well, quite rightly, the Gestapo.
I used to be quite popular until they started seeing my name popping up, and now it's like, oh, that bastard.
So there was. I can actually remember going up to Strathclyde Uni where Sandy was studying, and him and a guy called Stevie, they were explaining how the thing worked. And there was kind of, I would say the first Rangers internet guru was a guy called James C. Armstrong, who was an American guy who had slightly otherworldly was James, and he did a degree in St Andrews University, get into Rangers through that. But like, James would disappear for a couple of days, and if the list had collapsed, you'd be like, James, where the hell have you been? And he'd be like, oh, sorry, man, I was out photographing eagles. So it turns out he is a very good photographer of eagles.
Fair enough.
So
somebody has to be.
So you had that, and it was also in the days when because everything was dial up. If you were operating home, it was quite difficult to use. It was Mosaic was the main browser. So I can actually remember going for a series of 6 classes at Strathclyde University, evening classes where you basically got to use the internet. So you just roam around the internet. And I remember there was a lady who I would say was a MILF before MILF was invented.
Again, through the internet.
Apologies to any of our relatives, but I remember that this lady, Colette McClenaghan was her name. And
aye.
Don't know what team she supported, but I remember meeting her and chatting with her, blah blah blah, and then about 3 weeks later there was this learned article in Scotland and Sunday, and it was Colette McClenaghan explaining the internet, and you're like, but she just learnt it last week, like me. So
she was an early adopter.
Yeah. So I mean, it was the kind of days when I can remember when I first started the degree, and to use a computer basically meant that you went to the computer department and you booked an hour, and then you went in and it was like command/, and this is how old it is. The last computer language I actually learned was Fortran 77, which for those of you who are nerds is a computing language used by engineers.
Yes. Not an easy one.
So it really was ancient. And then, as I say, discovered CompuServe, got a CompuServe account, and took off for there, and then discovered these email lists. So that was really the start. Then, out the blue, I got a letter at the follow post box from a guy in Edinburgh, and just a student, and it's so long ago, and I hope this guy contacts me again. But he was a bit like that, and he had the beard, and he had the ponytail, and it was a lovely guy, and he says, I've set up a follow website for you. And what he'd done is he'd taken a couple of photographs of front pages, and then he said, I liked this one. It had an article by the Gub was ranting about something, and the Major was, discussing the iniquities of the Roman Catholic Church or whatever. And he would just put it on, say, and if you want to write to follow P.O. Box 539 or whatever it was. And so that was the original follow website. So what I started doing was I would send him a couple of articles by email. He would stick them up, and that was that. So that just puttered along for a wee while.
That's the one I remember.
It just puttered along for a couple of years. And then the bloke met him a couple of times through a mutual acquaintance who was at Edinburgh Uni, and he just, I think he must have graduated. He just disappeared, original ship in the night. So that site was still out there, but the internet wasn't really huge, and it was
again for younger listeners, Mark. You did have to go. It wasn't like you now where you access it from several different items you carry around with you. You had to sit down at a computer, take charge of the phone line. That was the thing.
Yep.
People couldn't phone when you were on the internet, and then use dial-up. And to load a page with any graphics on it at all could take genuinely minutes.
It was also quite an investment, because I can remember when I'd heard and I'd read about CompuServe, for instance. And it just so happened one of my mates says, oh, I know a guy that's a lecturer at Glasgow Uni, blah, blah, blah. I'm going to go up to see, what it all involves and how it charges. So Dave and I went up to this guy's flat up around about, somewhere around about Kelvin Bridge. And we actually, he let us use his CompuServe for a while. Because otherwise, the only way to go on the internet was to either be a student or to work in a company that had access, that had loads of money. So it was very much seen as an elitist thing in those days. Then in I would say it's about the winter of 1999, I get contacted at the post box by a guy called Mark Rinaldi. He's a Hibs fan. He'd written for various football magazines, and he then got employed down in London by Rivals, as in Rivals.net, which was owned by Chrysalis, and they had money from...
that's a media company for them. They were a record label, a lot of people remember, yeah.
And they'd backing from SoftBank, which was owned by Mitsubishi, And what they'd seen was, in America, there's a series of websites called Rivals.com, and they had various communities for all the, American football, ice hockey, baseball teams. So it was going great guns in America, so they decided they would get the franchise, run Rivals.net for football, Formula One, rugby league, rugby union, horse racing, cricket in Britain. So he contacted me, he says, I've been looking, and he said, saw your website. He said, but to be honest, none of the Rangers websites are really up to much. Which in those days, early days, contrasts with, for some reason, Hibs had a really thriving site that continues to this day called Hibs.net, and they already had a big traffic. So, but he says, I know from being a football fan that Follow has got a following.
Yeah, it's got a brand name.
With a fanzine.
Aye.
He said, so how do you fancy doing this? So went to a couple of meetings, and particularly there was one in Perth where they recruited people from all different fanzines mostly, or independent
Makes
websites.
sense. You've got the names, there's a built-in audience, people are going to recognise it. And I go back to when you're sitting there and you're searching and you think football, then you've put in your team, then you might put in the league, and then you go, well, what now? Topical Times Football Annual, So the idea, that's how I found it, was like, follow, I wonder if it's got a site.
The thing that Rivals really nailed right away was community. And we went to a couple of these meetings where, in hotels where they banged it into, the reason this will work is because community. You're going to build a community. You've got to involve the punters. It also introduced me to the perils of the legal world, because one of the guys sort of unsuspectingly said, what you've got to be aware of when you're writing an article is all the fans may know, and they may chant, and you may believe that your chairman's a paedophile, but you can't say it. Right? So we're all laughing, and one guy put his hand up.
A confessional?
And he says, yeah, what is it? He says, what happens if your chairman is a paedophile? So we all started laughing. It was a guy from an East Fife website who at that time, they actually had Julian Daniskin, who was a convicted paedophile, as their chairman. So with the Scottish accent, the Scottish humour, and this kind of bankers English guys are going, ho ho ho, what?
Actually, no, it really is.
It may be a wee bit problematic. So
I'm only surprised that cunt didn't turn up with us in the banter years, because that would have just topped everything off.
Oh, they were so that was my first kind of introduction to the idea of Rivals, which I think, to be honest, has probably spoiled us, because they were so well funded. Technical stuff was superb. They had legal people. They had guys on you every day. Here are what your numbers, how you were doing, and so forth. So we launched that. It was a kind of like a soft launch to start with, and so that would have been about early 2000, and that was how we started. Was at a slow pace, and but by this time I'd bumped into a few people who in Glasgow who were involved in the internet. Kind of budding. People who were putting sites together, or academics and whatnot, and I said, I'm doing this, and what do you think? And I said, well, if after the first week you've got about 1,000 hits, however you count 1,000 hits, whether that's page impressions or just hits, whatever you do, if you're hitting a couple of thousand, that should get a busy site, so you'll be able to measure it against that compared with sites that we do. And the first day that Follow went live, we'd over 10,000. Yeah. So right away, people are going, and the guys at Rivals were like, whoa, what's going on here? This is something a bit different to some of the other sites. So from then, it really grew. Let's topsy and turvy.
I'm going to come in here like a punter, because that's what I was back in those days. Now, to any of you who are listening to this and you use message boards and you complain about admin, or you think that it's restricted what you can say and how you get online and all the rest of it, that early board was like the fucking Wild West, right? There were maybe about a few hundred regular posters of us, and you didn't need to register. You just literally went on the site, typed in your name, and you then could start a thread, and it would go from there. And it was the reason that I think I've managed to develop elbows in the world was if you couldn't handle pressure, it wasn't the place to be. We had people leaving there in tears. I mean, because you used to allow on, it felt new and it felt exciting. And so things that are going to blow the mind of younger listeners, genuinely, like Tim's could come on FF, and there were established. Remember Todders, the Aberdeen fan?
Yeah.
And there were guys who would come on who were supportive of our team and take the piss, but they would also just get involved in the chat, and people accepted it. It hadn't got quite so segregated yet. And if you showed any weakness whatsoever, you were dead. And honestly, now that people think they can't, you can't say much online, or maybe think the opposite of online abuse, I think that's why you and I, when we hear about online abuse, we kind of go, that, you're upset about that? Because back then, nothing was off limits, was it?
Well, also I think it inures you a wee bit, because even back in those days, because I took it seriously about reporting things. And
who to, sorry?
to rivals.
Right.
If there was something untoward, you can legally cover yourself.
Absolutely.
And so the guy that, there's a couple of different people did the Celtic site in those days, and there was a couple of changes. But basically, they also took it seriously about reporting things and whatever, and banning folk and whatever. So between us, we're banning or reporting 60% of the complaints of the entire network. And that was only because the only thing that had ever been worse was the Indian and Pakistan cricket sites.
Two warring nations.
Who eventually the rivals took the decision just to get rid of them, because they described it as being the old firm with nuclear weapons. So it might be bad, but we ain't that bad. So that was fun. But so also I think you've got the whole West of Scotland thing, the humour, the in-your-face stuff. You've got the rivalry and the nature of the rivalry with Celtic, and you've also got the fact that they are completely bonkers. So you've got that into the factors. So I remember not too long ago, and there was a kind of meeting with the people who were, by this time many years later, we'd moved on to Footy Mad, and some of these guys were anguishing about, we've got a new guy coming to join the network, and has anybody got rules and regulations about what you should ban for and what your admin should look like, and they were all really tortured about this. And I said, well, I just say to my admins, ban them and you can sort it out later. The bad drives out the good. So if any doubt, ban, the guy can appeal, whatever. And I said, I don't know why you're getting so upset. I said, because we've banned over 6,000 people. Yeah. And it was literally like, you could hear a pin drop, and they're like, what? And I'm like, okay, I would do about 30 or 40 sort of thing. So it's a different culture, and I don't think people really get the ideas that, when you have to carry the can for this.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not even a legal thing, it's just to have a debate. You've got to have rules. I mean, people say, I can go on Facebook and I can say anything. Yeah, well, that's why Facebook is starting to go down the tubes, because it's going the same way as Twitter. Unmanaged, unregulated, no rules, even the kind of fairly light touch that we have.
Yeah, exactly. And we will come to that later on. And because I've been a bit of a poacher turned gamekeeper, I think I've looking forward to having a chat to you about that. Now, the summer of 2001 was when you really first, you told me, was when you first thought, hang on a minute, there's something going on here.
What I did fairly early was, for instance, the Cambridge United website, that it was held up a bit like the Hibs one has been a really good site, because they had unbelievable traffic. And you're thinking, Cambridge United have only got 4,000 or 5,000 people, and it was as dull as dust. But what the girl, or now lady, was called Andrea Throssell, which was a slightly strange name, but what she did was every day 3 articles about Cambridge United.
That's a lot every day.
Could be there is. So basically, anybody that was a Cambridge United fan in the whole world, that was the place to be, and it had massive traffic, and that was really like a signpost to where the internet was going. That individuals with an interest in anything, it could be model railways or cars or whatever. If you got a forum for them, then it could generate massive traffic. And she did that. She got a hold of that. So that was really the magic formula, was 3 articles a day. I started doing that. I think today it's almost pointless doing that, kind of like news roundups and whatever, because there's so many
different
outlets,
sources.
there's so many aggregators that do it automatically.
There really wasn't.
So that's what I was doing. So it was an amalgamation of put up an article about something or other, maybe a news roundup. Also, I was very lucky in that time. I had 3 pals in Italy, and there's 3 sports dailies in Italy. So I knocked it off because I had Roberto did the whatever the sports daily is in Milan. Fabrizio could look at Tuttosport in Turin, and Luigi could look at the Roman sports paper. So they had huge amounts of info about people who had been in Rangers radar, ex-Rangers players. So I was getting all this stuff before anybody else in the world got it. I usually get a phone call or an email saying, there's something in Tuttosport or Corriere or Gazzetta. So did that. So it was coming in from all over the world, and then Rangers fans in Chile and all this kind of stuff. So this was all entirely new that these people could contact you. Then in the summer of 2001, myself and SM, who's still one of the admins, and met Stuart through the website. So the two of us went on this wee holiday together that coincided with Rangers pre-season tour. And I think there was 3 games, and we were there in Amsterdam for 10 days. So each day we would either go to the match, to the town where the match was, or we would pick some town and we would drive out to Apeldoorn or The Hague or whatever, or Hetloot to see King William's Palace and whatever, and then at night. So what we said was we're going to do a blog. This was kind of like a novel concept.
That's right, it was.
It was Suck in SM's Excellent Adventure.
Remember that?
Which lasted 1 day. Because after a night in the town with Stuart, the next day I woke up at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. So we just thought, well, the second day's vlog ain't going to happen, and it didn't happen for the rest of the tour because we were out of trees. And I can those of you know me, I'm not a fan of drugs, but I do like a swally. So whilst the wee man was
on
indulging in mushrooms and
perfectly legal
and
things in Holland,
yes,
we should point out. Yes.
And so that was that. But what I'd been able to do in the build up, I looked at the clubs we were playing, phoned them up, managed to get like their club insignia, and because they were a wee bit out the way, there was one in Wieset, there was Dovo, and so what I was able to do was to put in like a travel guide. I put that in follow, and that became quite popular for maybe a couple of thousand people that were going to these games. We bumped in, you'd bump into people in a Dutch motorway like Roby and all the guys from the old Loudon and Duke Street, and there'd be like this minibus turns up with all these urchins. You're like, big man, what are you doing? Oh God, we're just following what was on the internet. So I remember Stuart and I, at that time, laptops were almost like uninvented at that point, and so everything what we'd do every day, we would go into the centre of Amsterdam and use the EasyNet cafe.
Oh God! Hey.
And so
take me back now.
First day we're in there, we sees this guy on follow reading the guide to get into, I think it was Dovo, and so how you doing? We're the guys from follow. Blah, blah, blah. That was brilliant. And then towards the end of that week, we were in there, and this group of 5 or 6 guys come in, Glaswegian accent, Rangers. How you doing? But we were so out of trees last night, we've missed the plane. So they then used the search engines to book flights, and so they get a train to Charleroi, and then they flew to Glasgow via Belfast or something.
Aye.
So I'm thinking there, going, this internet thing's something. It's something totally different, because
totally
these guys are already so confident that they think we can get cheap flights, cheap trains, and get home tonight. It wasn't, they slept in. You think it's a major nightmare.
5 years ago, it would have been.
There.
5 years before that, it would have been a nightmare.
And so all that week we were bumping into people who had been on follow, had read the guide to how to get to these grounds, and you're just thinking, this thing's really taken off. There's people from Germany, they're from all over the continent that are, exile Blue Noses who've got in touch, and they're actually trusting what we're writing to actually get themselves to games. And as I say, with that group of guys, I'll never forget them, was just the way they were so confident about being able to, their credit cards and whatever, and put it on the internet and get themselves home. which, you know, today is
Powerful,
it's part of everyday life. But in those days, to see young guys so effortlessly using the technology, and, you know, they had all been following, you know, what we'd written in Follow about how to get the games. It was a real eye opener.
The day that I remember FF sort of coming into its own is easily rememberable because it was September 11th, 2001, obviously, and the BBC website collapsed, CNN's website collapsed, ITN News website collapsed, and I was at work, as were a lot of other bears, and the updates we were getting was from the thread on Follow, because people were sitting in the house watching it, and you were getting your updates from it that day. And obviously at the time you don't really think anything of it because the horror of what's going on was obviously to mind, but it was only afterwards, talking to people, that we realised collectively as users that it was our first point of call, and that's the first I remember that happening. Whereas now, and for years, I get up in the morning, I check Facebook, Twitter, email, FF. You know, it's part of my, and it has been for you know, coming up on 20 years now. But that was the first day I realised that the automatic port of call was always, I'll go on FF. And to be honest, now I get my news from FF, because if something happens, somebody will post about it in the lounge, which is the non-football bit for those of you who don't know. I suppose we've lost you by now, you're not still here if you don't know where the lounge is. But generally speaking, because occasionally for some reason something won't be deemed interesting enough to cover it, and Sally will say to me, did you see this on the news? And I'll say no, because, you know, I'll go and, don't get me wrong, I don't read it and then take whoever the guy's opinion on it, right? But if I see a story, I'll then go, oh. And especially with breaking news in the modern era, you know, where it really hits social media first, FF's kind of the place I generally will find it. But we move on now. Back then, there was what has been termed the internet bubble, and it caused the great bull market of the stock exchange at the time. There were, genuinely, younger listeners, internet companies that didn't have an office, that were being valued genuinely in the billions, based on an idea and the fact that they had a domain name. It was a crazy time. The stocks went through the roof. There were IPOs for everything. I remember one called echeesegraters.com, which was going to revolutionise the way we buy cheese graters. And it got valued at millions, like hundreds of millions. It was ludicrous. Everybody wanted to buy tech stocks. Everybody wanted to be online. Everybody wanted a presence on the internet. And then, of course, as happens with bubbles, they burst. And that was when you saw this sort of consolidation of the bigger companies and the ones who came through that, your Google, etc. It moved from being this kind of random thing to slightly more corporate, slightly more organised. And round about that time, similar thing happened to you, because, you know, corporations who'd put in a lot of money had to, if they'd not been that successful, or if they hadn't made good investments, they sort of backed out, and you then shifted to a new home.
Well, what we found was that there was the internet bubble, which was more a stock exchange thing, but at the same time, because of that, advertisers who'd been funding this suddenly realised, well, we don't really have any industry-wide tools that can actually measure how successful what we're doing
that's
is.
True. That didn't happen for at least another decade.
So almost overnight, I think Chris Lister, who owned Rivals, I think they said their advertising revenue in 1 month went down by 68% as people just left the internet.
And of course, we mentioned earlier 9/11. There was a huge knock-on effect on the economy right around the world.
So they had a problem, and how they solved it was to basically, they retrenched everything back to the 92 clubs in England. So at the end of season 2001-2002, it meant all the Scottish sites, all the international sites, all the Formula One, they did every Formula One team covered.
That's right.
So we all basically got told to,
piss off.
The party was over at the end of it. And what I say is, amongst the Scottish publishers, there's quite a few of them that I still keep in touch with to this day. There's some decent guys, and some of them wanted to go, stick it up Rivals, and I said, well, hold on, you never know, some of the guys that are working down there are decent people, they're likely to be around. Why don't we just do what the contract said and finish up, get a cheque and walk off, and go and do something else and see if we can find a home. So we did that.
You still had the traffic.
Yeah, and a few of the guys decided either to chuck it, and some of them went independent, did their own thing. Guy from St Johnstone went off on his own. But a few of us then started looking around. So found I met with people from Vital Football, which is based in Birmingham, and I met with them, and it didn't really work out because they were absolutely toiling for money at the time. In fact, a couple of weeks after I met them, they phoned me up and offered me half the company for $5,000. And I was like, well, I was actually hoping to get $5,000 off of you, mate. And so eventually settled on Footy Mad, which was based in Burnley, this industrial estate in Burnley, owned by the mysterious Mr. Taps.
Oh, aye.
And it was called Mr. Taps because he'd made all his money selling bathroom fittings. And I never actually met Mr. Taps. He might not have existed. I mean, like some of these owners of Portsmouth, that never actually existed. But I met his kind of.
So apparently the guy that owns Fish Fingers isn't a sea captain. Mr. Taps, that's brilliant.
And so I never met Mr. Taps, but it was run from this very swish office in Burnley. So obviously I was disappointed never to meet Mr. Taps. Cool. And they were not as technically efficient or anything else. Didn't have the same backup as rivals. But in the early days they actually did have the guy that looked after content, that chased you to make sure that you put up enough articles and to satisfy what they wanted.
I remember, Mark, though, the audience, and being one of them, like, change is not good. I don't like this. It looks different.
Well, the beauty about Rivals was, especially when it started, was because when you registered and nobody could stop you registering, which was obviously a problem. Yeah. I think we were getting IRA 1916. Yes. Could be a problematic user.
Yeah, I don't think he's a Rangers fan, that guy.
So they would all join, and the beauty about Rivals was it was so slick. So say for instance, so you're on follow, and there's no threads that you really fancy. So what we found was that you were keeping people for maybe 40 minutes on the system, and so they would look at the Rangers stuff. And then while they're waiting for updates, they would go and look at East Fife for Colchester or Man United or Arsenal.
An article.
Have a wee search through there, and then they click a button.
Because your name went right across.
Yeah.
That was if you were registered on Rivals, then you could go and post under your name on other. Because I used to go and leave abusive stuff on Aberdeen, and I never at the time. I always had a thing that I wasn't going to go there, but Aberdeen there, I used to go in and laugh at them a lot.
Well, you also had this phenomenon where the group from that emanated out the Blue Order, there was a wee group of them called the Sprinter Group Loyal, and led by the redoubtable Gaga, who once appeared to have been on follow continuously for 17 days. It was only later we found out that Opera, the browser, had an automatic update. So we were thinking, this maniac slipped. He must be dozed in caffeine. So him and Ross and all the rest of them, they used to organise an away day. What's an away day online? Well, what they would do is they would suddenly descend on the East Stirling website
Mob handed
and just take it over, or some Shrewsbury Town kind of admin would wake up and find there was several hundred people on his site talking about sectarianism. So there was a lot of good fun going on there. Well, good fun for them.
not so much for the admin.
Not perhaps for those whose websites were visited. So it was all good fun. Then we went to Footy Mad, and it wasn't as slick. But I always felt technically I'm pretty hopeless at these things. So I always felt for safety's sake a technical thing. And also an illegal kind of protection was that Rivals and Footy Mad had structure.
Yes, of course.
So if you signed up with them, you were some kind of legal
like
protection, and also it kept us in the straight and narrow that you'd people to report to, that you hopefully kept up some kind of standards, although that's obviously debatable. And so you had people there that maybe a bit more experienced than you in certain matters, so it kept you in the straight and narrow. So they provided a home for a long time. They went through some changes of ownership. They were owned by the European Sports Agency, which is a big agency that provided a lot of match reports and so forth to, all sorts of companies, newspapers around the world. They went through a few changes of ownership, which could become a wee bit problematic. But generally, it was, it wasn't perfect, but it was a home for a good number of years. And then just towards the end there, you start to get the feeling that, they didn't have the infrastructure, that, just things were, it was getting old, it was getting tired, it was clunky. And so there came a point where, a lot of people were saying to me,
it's time to go.
It's time to go, because you've got, however much you try, it's the technical stuff isn't up to date. It's an old system. Whatever they're trying to do to upgrade it, isn't it? It's making it slow, and it's actually stopping the site growing.
Yeah, and so, it was bad by the end of the ads. It was slow, it was clunky.
Well, they were relying on follow to provide so much of the traffic for the adverts that it was...
that they all ended up there. No, I know, we know. Trust us, we know. We'll talk about the nice new shiny website in a minute. But follow.com changed my life. It got me divorced. It made me an alcoholic, indirectly. But
and those are the good things.
Let's go back to the fresh.
What's follow ever done
Let's
for you?
go back. Exactly. Let's go back to a fresh face, 24-year-old David, and this is when the meetups began.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you were like me and you were in your boring job but you had internet access, and this is before work started putting in their sophisticated software to kind of track what you were. You really only had to avoid your boss catching you over your shoulder, kind of thing. So I would be on it, all day, and you're chatting away to people all day. And Scott Bear / Earl of Leven, it's clearly has been on there.
Are they not two different people?
No, they're the same person, Mark. The big reveal.
I never spotted that.
The big reveal. You still call him Scott Bear after all these years. And we all met up. We started meeting up at Annie Miller's. And from there, I've said, and I think you can trace a direct line from the meetups to the, well, let's take this a bit further. At first it was, we'd go for a curry or we'd go for a bevy. But
what was our first venue? Where did we go for the first curry?
First curry was at the Koinur. I've got that.
It was.
I have a memory.
No, was it Bombay down at? It was definitely down at Anderson.
Right.
Beside the motorway.
I definitely remember at the Koinur.
Because we all came out steaming, strangely enough.
Yeah.
And then went to an internet cafe in Sauchiehall Street to tell everybody else
what
a night we'd had.
I remember. But the first one I remember, or not the first one, but I definitely remember one up at the Koinur, and then later on one at Satie's. But after a while, we kind of skipped the meal part of it, and we would just go to Annie's and get bluttered. And from that, though, the chat started to change to being, this is great, and you meet up and you make friends. You know what I mean? I've met you, met Scott, met loads of people, Ian, loads of guys that I'm still friendly with. But the fact is that pretty much most of that group went on to do something in support of activism, for want of a better word. I know that sounds a bit wanky, but it is true that very few people just went and did the bevy, and then they all went off to form a group because we're Rangers fans and we all need to have our own group.
I remember when Ian Hogg first arrived in the scene.
That bastard.
And I remember the Gub saying, blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, he's taking a bit of doing this guy, but I think he's got something about him. And the Gub sort of said, he's still undergoing the journey. We've still got a bit of work to do on him. It's almost as though he was been groomed to join the gang.
And it was, we all had to go on because at this time, 2002, you're talking Murray steps down and there's a debt of 80 million and you're like, hang on, what? Hold on. And suddenly things change. Rangers stop making the big signings that we'd been used to. 2002, you get Arteta comes in at 6 million. That's really the last time we'd been dabbling in those fees.
I like to think, whatever faults the fanzine and the websites had, and no doubt they've had, it has had many, and I put most of those down to myself, because at the end of the day you've got to have somebody in charge. But what I like to pride ourselves on is that we've always been doing things. We've always been an engine for change. Now, whether that's culturally within the club, campaigning about the media, or for instance, when I would say myself, I don't blame anybody for being a David Murray fan, because if you look at the first half of his reign, it was done without the debt or whatever. I mean, I think the worst season we had 9 in a row, we lost some like 1.8 million.
Rangers were profit. People forget that Rangers were profitable the first 10 years under David Murray. Up until Dick Summer was the first one.
And then for me, well, obviously, I think the thing that's affected absolutely everything was in the 4.5 seasons of Dick's reign, we overspent by, I think I'm correct in saying, 124 million. And for me, the moment when all the kind of wee queries and quibbles I'd had about Murray came when we signed Torrey Andre Flo, because I just thought, we can never make that money back.
And we were just about to post annual losses of, I believe, something like 24 million, and then we've just spent 12, and you're like, hang on, we're about to post 24 million, and then we lash out 50% of that on one player.
Because what I would say to people is that, whether they're fans of Rangers or not, is that the whole point of a fanzine, the whole point of doing a website, I think, is to effect some change. It's not just about flying a kite about, who's the best left midfielder you've ever seen. If there's a point to it all, other than just, the joy of supporting your club, you've got to make changes, and that's what I've always thought about the trust. When we turned Andy Murray, and in those days, a lot of people didn't like to hear that, because he was such a powerful figure. Yeah. I mean,
he didn't.
He certainly did not. But, Murray, for all his faults, was far brighter, far more clever than, say, the bungling board at Parkhead, or Stephen Thompson, or Vladimir Romanov, or these guys.
Till he lost interest.
Far cleverer, far more dangerous person to take on than these guys. Even the showers that we had to deal with later, far brighter. So along the way, whether it was, let's say, Colin and Gordon initially coming up with the idea to form the trust, or one guy I don't think we can hope to mention, and I would put him in the same kind of breath as the Gub, as Simon Leslie, known as Man from Del Monte, because the beauty about Simon is, he's a bit madcap, he's a bit disorganised, Davy smiles wryly, but Simon knows what Rangers fans like, what motivates them, and he's also got an eye for our history. I mean, doing stuff about Bill Struth, about the legacy of Sam English, because everybody knew about the tragedy of John Thompson, but they didn't know the Sam English story. And through the campaigning, we were able to tell that. So that's some of the stuff that's made me proudest, is that not that Follow claims the credit for it, but we were the initial platform for a lot of this stuff. Like popularising the club's history.
It was a meeting place. It was an it was a tool.
Yeah. So if you look, for instance, let's say the Founders Trail started with the Founders Committee, the repopularisation of Struth through a lot of the stuff, the research the Gub did, the red and black scarves, the Rangers Erskine, where you had Tam, you had Simon, and it grew and grew from there. But a lot of these things, the beauty about them was that they outgrew Follow very quickly. They get into the broad mass of the support. So that's what I'm most proud of, is that it's become like a wee incubator for all these ideas.
Aye,
and people come in, they give you an idea, and what do you think? You say, well, stick it up and I'll send it a mass email and see if we get a response. And then off they go. It's then up to them whether it flies or it sinks. So that's what I love seeing, is somebody comes up with some daft idea and it isn't daft.
No, that's the thing about FF, is you say that it offers you, if you want to do something, it offers you somewhere to start, somewhere to meet other people and float the idea to see if it's any good, because you will be told if it is not. In a collegiate fashion by the users, that your idea perhaps is without merit, but it also then gives you a central meeting point. It gives you a place to crowdsource, if you like, information and say, do you like this? No. Should we do this? No. Yes. Go more there. So you can get a lot from it, and it does offer you that sort of, for want of a better term, a meeting place and somewhere, and also an audience. And that I can't stress that enough. If you want to get something going, you can have the best idea in the world. If nobody knows about it and you've no way of getting it to them, whereas in FF you instantly have access to that, as you say, if your idea's any good. Now, we've had many a social night over the year. We've had, in my case, an FF divorce. So it's only fair enough to point out, and I'm sure we've had many FF divorces, incidentally. I'm just laughing when I think about that, the amount of guys are you on that fucking site again?
I remember QV Loyal, who sadly has gone to his eternal reward. And I remember being told that his missus could tell when he was angry on a Friday night because the sound of him battering the keyboard got louder and louder.
See the meme that goes with the woman's lying in bed in the negligee and it's come to bed, husband, and he's like, I can't, there's somebody on the internet who's wrong. That, for me, sums up FF in the mid-2000s and still to this day at times. But, those are all the kind of... But there was an FF marriage. In fact, there's been more than one.
Oh, yes. And there's been a few FF Lotharios. Some of us will remember Stefano.
Yes.
And Stefano would come on. Here, boys, I was up the Savoy at the week, met this stunner, blah, blah, blah. So he was always talking about women and whatever. So eventually he says he's coming to one of the follow do's Christmas night. So we're expecting this wee sort of dumpy guy to turn up living in a fantasy world. So this young trendy dude turns up, and I mean, the girl he was with was like a Glaswegian of Pakistani descent, but I mean, literally did she knock her back teeth out. She was an absolute stunner. And I'm like, he is a shagger in real life.
Well, that actually takes us on, before we come on to the kind of agitation under the last board, the bit I've been looking forward to the most, Mark. Legendary threads from FF, right? Legendary posters, legendary threads. And I'm going to start you off with a few favourites of mine. First of all, the poor fucker, he'll be listening to this, it'll haunt him for life, Caldy Blue, right? Mm-hmm. Who posted a thread that I've memorised. I didn't need to go and look it up. I've read it that often. And up he posts one day, years ago, 2007, I think. Bear in Love, it was called, right? And the rule of FF, I'm giggling thinking about it, the rule of FF is it's always the first answer, and I stick by that. Yeah. It's always the first answer. And this guy posts up a thread saying, does anyone else really love their missus like that when she goes away they feel almost actual pain inside? She's away on holiday at the moment and I don't know what to do without her. And don't just say drink, because I drank so much cider at tea in the park I can't even face it. First answer, Jesus Christ. Right? And from there it
was all downhill.
It proceeds to be right. And the fact that he'd revealed she was in Spain, somebody said, you know, mate, she's getting filled up at the moment by 6 Spanish waiters. One guy to the tune of Love Is All Around by Wet 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 was to me, I've got them in my fingers, I've got them in my toes, cocks are all around me, I'm a bukkake ho. And at the end of the day, trying to kill it, he comes on and says, I've learned a very painful lesson today. 10 years later, that thread's still going. He's married to her, right? And it still gets dusted down. And I would say that's my favourite thread of all time. There are others. The other one being a guy who said, I want to dump my missus in the most painful way possible. I found that she's been cheating on me. What do you guys recommend? First answer, it's always the first answer. Stab her in the throat and throw her in the Clyde. Well, I thought it was quite passive when I read that.
We cannot recommend that.
Don't do that. I hope he didn't do that.
I still think because it's so Glasgow, and
it's very Glasgow, yeah.
And if you think,
which is the joy of it, the humour is just outstanding.
It's brutal. But the one I loved was on our temporary website where we get moved after some unfortunate incidents regarding to the well-being of Neil Lennon.
We'll come to that.
And so this guy posts up, I've just battered the father-in-law. And you're thinking, initially you might think, oh, this is a made-up one. But it's clear from the tone. From the tone and the details of the incident that, he had battered his father-in-law. And he's saying, the missus is going mad about it. And you're like, well,
again, first answers, right? I had to have my horse put down today. I'm sorry, because that's, if you love animals, that's obviously a tragic day. Has anybody had a worse day than me? First answer, the horse. It's just not a place to come for sympathy, is it?
No,
You're not going to get it.
There's one guy who obviously didn't realise that that I'm more a fan of cats than dogs, and he came on and he said, like Bonzo died today, and people were giving him condolences, and I went on and I says, well, look at the good side, at least you'll get a pair of slippers and a Davy Crockett hat. Right? So people are going, oh, boo, boo, you're sick, and the guy went, I know that's a bit sick, but you have cheered me up.
Yeah, it's just
so,
you know the rules. If you're going to post in the lounge, please be aware of what can happen. There's been some legendary posters in there.
But the beauty about it, I think, is we're kind of thinking about some of the the ones that became famous, but it is literally some of the one-liners that somebody just bangs it in, and you smile and you move on, because you know what. You can't add to some of them because they're just everything will be an anticlimax. That's done and dusted it, and I love that kind of quick fire sense of humour.
And that's it. See if there's genuinely something serious. We have seen that with people who needed help. And listen, we've had a laugh there and a joke, and there's some cracking funny threads. But two threads in particular. Well, it's the same thread, but it's been across the boards as the depression and help thread, where. Someone posted up that they were struggling, and we could tell by the time, as admin, we could tell by the time it was posted and the tone of it that this was something serious, and people started coming out and saying, I suffered from depression, and this is what I did, and also help with alcoholism and stuff like that, and we can laugh and joke about it, but people have got help through this. People have actually said, thanks lads, and you see, message me and I'll talk to you about it, and people have actually gone and have gone to AA and sorted out their life, have gone to their doctor, and the community, it keeps coming back to that word, it's about the community.
Look, there's a couple of times actually the admins, because you can tell when it's really serious, and there's been a couple of times when
the people are suicidal,
using stuff in the background, we've actually been able to get help to them that night. So it's
and taking it offline. If someone has been genuinely, we've noticed this, taking a thread off, but then gone and spoke, talk to the guy, and as you say, brought. So
it's good that people, despite all the madness, they do feel at home there, and they're able to say those kinds of things. And then, as I say, some of the one-liners was, I can't even remember what the guys were arguing about, and it was like, I've got 200 quid in my pocket. What have you got, you tramp? And the guy just went, shrapnel. And that was like,
you can't big time anybody on there. It's just don't. Legendary posters. Ethel has to be mentioned. There was nobody who could get under the skin, because again, this is in the era when Celtic supporters, other supporters could come on, and nobody could drive them nuts the way Ethel could.
But the thing about Ethel, which nobody really wants to know, is the number of times we're going, this is his last chance. If he does one more thing, he's gone. The username's gone. But it always just seemed to pull it back. And I remember we done FF night in Larne, and they ran a bus from Belfast, and we used to have a Tame Tim on the website called East Belfast Tim. And so Ethel turned up for the bus and introduced himself as East Belfast. No, you can't come. But I really like you guys. And he played it through. And the thing is, Bobby just had a work-a-day job, but online he came to life. Some of his stuff people didn't like. Hey, that's the way things are. But this was a guy who fairly late in life had decided, had taken the opportunity, and he'd started writing a few sketches for some of the local comedy programmes over there. But that was his mischievousness, was that he would give them some stuff, and then he would go, how about this for a sketch? Yeah. And they'd go, whoa, too much even for the return.
We can't do that. And there have been some amazing posters over the years, some funny ones, some guys who amazing football knowledge. Even now there are guys who, Argentinian football, something I didn't know much about, and they'll post you. And that was one of the influences in when I started the Patreon site. The big part of that was get talent out, and it was the years in FF that it taught me. There's tons and tons of talent in the Rangers support. You just need to give them a platform.
I think as well, we've pulled out Ethel there as one, and you could probably, I've probably got about 24 favourite posters over the years. But what happens with some of them is, and which I think is good, it's a bit like the fanzine. Some guys have got something to say, and they say it, and once they've said it, they're happy that they've done it, and they disappear. That they wanted to get it off their chest, or they've only got one topic that they're really
interested in,
or one era in the club, and that's the way life is, and that's what I like, is that people who they know that there's no point in going on every thread and doing this, because it's just churn.
Mm-hmm.
But when they've got something important to say, they've got an audience there, and they'll find fellow spirits, and sometimes it ends up in it becomes a popular idea amongst the fans, or incidents that they've done, other people go away and do research, and I love all that stuff when people are actually able to say, your memory's good, your memory's bad, I've got this, or my dad remembers that, or I've been up to the Mitchell Library and actually found the game you're talking about, or old players, where's so-and-so now, and it's like, one of the dudes, Jim Denny turned up at.
FF legend, Jim
Denny.
Yeah.
So there's, there's that kind of thing about football where Rangers are to a certain extent spoiled because we've got such a rich history, such a successful history. But I find time and again that what really matters to punters isn't so much those victories, it's the memory of being there with your pals, with your dad. That's the sort of thing about football that I think we've hopefully been able in some ways to encapsulate. But, it's, as one of my pals says, life isn't all about weddings and christenings. There's a few funerals along the way, a few divorces along the way. And I think that's how I kind of view it now, is that it's there's always a new challenge, and hopefully it means applying standards and principles and learning from the past that we can apply to these situations. If I'm getting a bit philosophical about it.
The Spivs, that whole era, it was difficult. It was not an easy time for any Rangers fan, and of course, when you're worried, and summer 2012 was the worst, because it was just, people joke that it was, it felt like getting a boot in the balls every day. It felt like getting a boot in the balls every 3 hours. There was, there wasn't one bad story a day coming out, and we came through it. But then, of course, it led into the banter years, and it took a long time to wash the stain out of the club. What was it like then on the board and on the fanzine, and what you used it for?
I would say that maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, or overstating its importance, because at the end of the day it is a message board, and a number of things, as Big used to say, it was thousands of people doing certain things that saved the club. But I'd always thought, once I saw Murray going wrong, that there would be dark days.
I reckon.
I never thought they would be as dark as they were. And my inspiration had always been the Charlton fans and their Back to the Valley campaign, to get themselves out of Selhurst Park and back to the Valley, their home. And they stood in elections and they get people elected to the council.
The Valley Party, sorry.
Yeah, and I always thought that's how it would be for us, and we would all rally round. Also, I would say probably the most instructive thing from the entrenched position was if you get a hold of Michael Kelly's book about Celtic's takeover. That gives you the most detail about how in real life people fight over football club. So again, I thought it would be some lessons from there about how to take on a board, and then the Valley, the Charlton fans. I always thought that really, in my mind, that was the blueprint. If things ever get really bad for us, we would all rally together and we'd be pushing this direction, and then once things started to really hit the fan with Craig White and all, I remember I would say that the darkest day for me was when I opened up Follow one morning, and it was pages and pages, and people were arguing over whether we should have Bill Ing or Bill Miller as the owner and who had the money. And I went, you're off your nut, you know nothing about them, they're not Rangers fans. Why would we put ourselves in jeopardy when you've got a group of Rangers fans with money, with Paul Murray, with Dave King and all these guys? Why would you possibly want somebody that isn't a Rangers fan to own the club? Mm-hmm. And that was the darkest day for me. I don't blame anybody that became a Charles Green fan. I don't blame anybody who, kept up their season ticket and didn't join the boycott, because Rangers have been owned by people that I haven't been fans of in the past. Yeah. And so, it's part of the deal that, a long time, to be honest, when I supported Rangers. I had no idea who the directors were. I wasn't interested, only interested in what happened on the pitch. So I would say it became very dark because I fell out with people that I thought were pals. I'm happy to put my hand up and say I made bad decisions in some things, but I stuck with it. And the central thing that got me about all these people was because I'd taken such an interest in the finances of the club under Murray, I knew what Rangers was financially and what it wasn't. And my core belief was you could not do what they said they were going to do, as in the price of their shares or their investors making money out of Rangers, unless you did one or two things. One was you did something bent, or you sold off the assets, i.e. Ibrox, as in Auchenhowie, or the branding of the club. Yeah. That was, I think, ultimately what they were going to make the really big money out of was sell Ibrox off to some pension fund, and then we would be leasing it back for £4 or £5 million a year, which was the thing you and I were involved in, where we fought David Murray at standstill not to do that.
2003.
That they would sell off Auchenhowie for its land value, that they would sell off the brand of Rangers, as some of them eventually tried to do with Mike Ashley. And as we know, the Rangers shops and the merchandising, that was the one thing that through everything had always made the club money. That was the crown jewels. So when I asked Charles Green or Imran Ahmed, how do you intend to make your investors money, it just didn't add up. No. So that told me that either they were bent or they were going to do things that were legal but ultimately would cripple Rangers for the long term. There's a lot of people couldn't see that. A lot of people argued in tactics. And there's a lot of bitterness to this day that I have personally for a number of people. I'm sure they have for me because, as you know, David, sometimes I'm the guy that has to deliver the bad news to people that, you're not quite as talented or as clever as you think you are.
I still hold it against you.
And... so sometimes I've had to be the person that delivered those messages because everybody else was fumbling about at meetings. But when people come in and say, Rangers fans never agree about anything, what does that mean? We're a huge support. There's over 1 million people support Rangers, according to whatever statistics you get. But in the thick of things, from the day when Paul Murray met myself and John Gilligan, way back when Murray was still in charge, and him and other people on the board at that time knew that what Murray was doing was going to be dreadful for a club if we get away with it. So we fought all the way through there. Hopefully we didn't change our coach too often. And then when it came to the end, when it was open warfare and in internal communications in the club, myself, Chris Graham and Lego were described as the arch agitators. Yeah. And we would shortly be joined by Big Husty when him and Sandy started off the Sons of Struth. And it wasn't fun anymore when people were trying to take your home off you. In one case, one of our friends, he actually was dragged through the courts and was in jeopardy of losing his home over this. When it was either 17 or 19 visits from the police, because they were putting in all these spurious complaints about people supposedly being threatened and whatever. When all that's happening, and other people were having threats at their business and so forth, it's not funny anymore.
No.
In the past we had campaigns and it was fun. This was so deadly serious that it wasn't fun anymore, and you were falling out with people that had different attitudes in a way that you'll probably never have the same relationship with them again. But this idea that we can't agree on anything, well, I'm afraid that most of the organisations that were worth a toss and wanted to fight, we all got on fairly well. In the Union of Fans, you had the Blue Order, you had the Union Bears, you had Sons of Struth, you had the Assembly, you had the Trust, you had a couple of independent websites that were against them. So we pushed in the right direction, and basically what we said was we're going to carpet bomb Ibrox with information. Some of that's going to be leaflets, it's going to be in the media, it's going to be online. And so I threw everything that I possibly could and follow into that. With a website, with articles, with organising things. And a lot of the people that joined that mass movement in the street, that was where they first heard about it, was on the website. So I certainly don't put the success of getting rid of the spivs down to follow, but we were a part of that movement.
Absolutely.
And I would say it's been the best of times and it's been the worst of times, because, as I say, there were people who are genuine blue noses, took a different view, and it did get very bitter. And I did lose some pals, but you know what? I never thought about it. I never thought about it twice, because what mattered to me was to put the club, make sure it was in safe hands, and if that meant some personal loss, well, I didn't care. It mattered too much to me. So when I had to make a decision between keeping somebody as a pal or losing them, there never was much of a discussion. So, as I say, it wasn't pleasant, but I am proud. I wish I'd played more of a part. Wish I hadn't been so conservative with a small c early on.
I think
but then again,
we didn't know, and that's okay with hindsight to say we should have. But at the time we were, and remember we'd been through so much, we were a bit gun shy.
I can remember saying to Gordon Denny, who was the chairman of the trust at the time, and I said, "We know we're right, and we know this is headed only one way, but if we are now the only group that isn't endorsing Charles Green, and we're out in a limb. And you know what? When the tide turns, if we're so far out in a limb, a lot of people never forgive us.
You won't get them back.
Right?
Yeah.
So we've got to hold our noses, swim with the tide, and we know that the tide will change. But for the next couple of months, we've just got to suck it and see.
Politics.
Because if he sold 38,000 season tickets, there's a message in that for us. We knew it would fall apart because it had to. Just common sense economics told you it was going to fall apart. And I'm glad to say we follow, whether it was subsidising some of the leaflets, whether it was the mass emails. The crucial thing is the spivs knew how important we were. Mm-hmm. Again, without the punters, the punters created the conditions which meant that Dave King and his allies were able to buy enough shares in the club to make a difference. And without the punters, those conditions, didn't matter how much money they had, it would have been a far, far more difficult struggle. So we played our part and they played their part. So it's not quite the fairy tale, it's not quite the linear progression that I hoped it would be. It was uphill and down dale and a bit patched together, and God knows how we did it, but together Rangers fans did it. And towards the end, that when it started to snowball, you're just like, oh, it's got a life of its own now, and once it's over, we'll never see days like this in our lifetimes.
Fingers crossed on that one, big man. Just before we go then, there's been, over the last few years, changes in the net, changes in the culture, really around the growth of social media and Facebook, Twitter, etc. But I mean, I would say that message boards are still a form of social media, an early form of social media. In fact, you could argue that it was almost the introduction to people to the idea of communicating online with groups of strangers. That really put the seed in mind for a lot of people. Although you still get on FF guys who are there 4 hours a day saying, I don't get social media, I don't understand why people do it, and you're like, mate, hello. But how has that affected the site, and how has it affected behaviours round about the site is probably more what I'm interested in.
I think we're pretty lucky because it's been going for quite a while. There's a kind of acceptable standard of behaviour. Some of it's still, we still allow stuff that's pretty nutty. But when I look at Facebook and Twitter, I think Facebook's going the same way. Twitter's a great place for finding information. I subscribe to loads and loads of different sites or guys who've got Twitter feeds, and there's some marvellous information that you pick up there. But I find Twitter extremely difficult to follow in a debate, and it's very difficult. And also because it's so short, it means people can be very caustic to one another, and quite often
quite quickly as well. It goes to
people go for the nuclear button very quick.
It's not to 16 seconds. Yeah.
On Facebook, people say, I can say what I like in Facebook, and I don't get moderators or admins cutting me off. And you're like, yeah, well, that's great so long as what you're saying is actually worth a toss. And sadly, most people, they don't really get the fact that, you know, most people, myself included, live pretty mundane lives. You know, we're not all liberal polymaths, you know, where people want to hang in on every word. So it's great for communication, but unless you have rules, and also I don't think Facebook helps you. You and I know how difficult it is to moderate a busy Facebook page, because it doesn't give you the same tools that a message board does.
It doesn't even give you you don't even get them in even as a moderator, you don't even get a list of the last post.
Yeah.
And even to us, it will display stuff from Thursday, and you're like, I don't want to know Thursday. I would like to know what people have said today, which is part of it. That nobody likes Facebook. It's one of the reasons why it's finding itself in trouble, Mark. That's why Facebook has no defenders.
And I don't want to be elitist in this, but people say, what's the biggest difference? The biggest difference is that technology is idiot proof, so therefore you've got a lot more idiots on the internet, and that's just a fact of life. And if those people have no rules that are enforced on them, then very quickly things go very wrong. So Facebook and Twitter, I don't blame the companies, it's people that are misusing them, and that's a problem. Whereas on message boards, what you're finding now is that the demographic for message board tends to be between about 5 and 10 years older than Twitter and Facebook. And Twitter and Facebook are now getting overrun by Instagram and Snapchat, because that's how people live their lives now, is through their mobile phones. And, you know, anybody that can, you know, switch the on button can now get on to the internet. Whether what they do on there is up to much is really anybody's guess. But I tend to think that communication in itself is a good thing. What I don't like, and we've had this, is the ghettoisation of interest groups. So if you go onto a Celtic site, there are no Rangers fans there. You go onto a Rangers site, there's no Celtic fans. And that goes for most clubs now. Whereas in the past, you actually did have a little bit of better behaviour, more of an alternative view. Whereas now, I actually think the Celtic sites are a lot better example than the Rangers sites. Two of the biggest Celtic sites are, I would say, not really indicative of the Celtic support as a whole, because they're so extreme and that they constantly promote hatred as a norm. Things that were fairly outre before the internet came are now commonplace. So I think it can be a dark place. But on the other hand, follow's got its faults. But again, I've always been motivated by the reality of life as a fan, for myself, my family, for my friends going to the football. And I think Follow has been a great place where that reality has been shown to the rest of the world. For instance, when I was growing up, people kept saying Rangers are the establishment club. Like that. Well, not in my lifetime.
Not anymore, no.
Well, certainly not in my lifetime. So I wonder, was it in my dad's lifetime or my grandfather's lifetime? So we're now leaving a record, an imprint on the internet of the reality of being a Rangers fan, and also it's a place where people can learn from older fans, and hopefully the standards that we expect to the club and the players and amongst the punters. That's not to sugarcoat it for them, because at the end of the day, the west of Scotland is a fairly kind of brutal place at times. So I'm all in favour of showing both sides of the support, the good and the bad, but to keep it in its context. Now, I think without being a woolly liberal, that's really what.
Does it really suit you?
Shall we say a classical liberal? Is that the truth never really hurt anybody, and that's what I've always been mindful and follow is, amongst all the madness and the good times, is when you talk seriously, you do talk seriously, and you're able to back it up, not with mindless prejudice, but with the reality, with facts, and there's this great exchange of ideas about who we are and what we are and how the modern world impacts on the club and where we've been and where we're going to go. So that may sound a bit woolly, but I do believe that this kind of amazing collection of people that we've met along the journey. Some of them have left, some of them have gone, going upstairs or downstairs, depending on how they behaved. But we have been a pretty good I would say a fairly decent example to people who aren't Rangers fans why they should support Rangers. The fun that we've had along the way is the main thing.
Well, Mark, thank you very much. Utterly fascinating, and I know a lot of people were asking when we were going to do this part 2, so I'm really glad that we were able to bring it to them this week, because it's been fantastic. And like I say, I know that for me, the site has just been, all joking aside, my life's taken some strange turns over the years, and it wouldn't have happened if I hadn't looked into it all those years ago. And as you say, met some amazing people, and it's given me personally so many opportunities and friendships and highs. And the fact that I can still 10 years later, recite word for word threads, I think shows you the impact that it's had. I would like to thank our sponsors for today, maitlandandco.net. If you have any legal needs whatsoever, please go and visit them. That's maitlandandco.net, and all the details of course are in the ad at the start of the show. I'll thank our executive producers in London, Mr. Mike Lee and Mr. Paul Ayers. If you want more content like this, where it's not just about the week to week at Ibrox and you want to hear stuff about the history, stuff about the background, anything like that, please visit our Patreon site. It's patreon.com/Heart in the Hand, and it's just $1.99 per month for around about 100 hours extra content a month. The production is even surprising me at this point. That is pretty much everything from me. I'll be back Thursday with Heart in Hand Extra, and we will have back to the normal routine with the preview show for Saturday's match at Motherwell. Mark, thank you very much, my friend.
It's lovely to have been had, David.
I will talk to you again all later. Cheers. Bye.